instance, then it was reflecting properly.
It should actually happen in the same instance also.
Okay. Yeah, then I will try to do it again today and I will see.
Yeah, try it again, and we can see tomorrow. Otherwise, if you can log in from that laptop.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay. Thank you.
Even I have a question. I'm Shobana.
Yeah, Shobana.
Actually, yeah, I'm trying to add web reference in a different application, and it got added, and even that method name and all, it gets reflecting. But while running the application, it is saying, are you missing any assembly or reference?
Okay. I'll check it, Shobana. I'm making you the presenter.
Yeah, sure.
Ramya, I did not get time to look at your assignment. I will check it today.
No problem, Tanvi. Yeah.
So this is, are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, I can see.
This is one application, and this is in here I have added that I just tried for 2 numbers. Here I have added that this web services, and here I made a web reference. But here it's coming here and all, but while running it's saying, are you missing any assembly or reference? If it is in same application, it is working fine for me.
No, because Shobana, what is happening is, since you are adding the reference of a DLL, which is, so you are adding a reference like localhost and some port, right? Like
yeah,
so.
Because
so you are because you are not hosting it.
No, actually, I mean, you are saying that I'm not running that application, that Explorer is not open, like that you are saying? Yeah, I know, I did like that also. I kept that page as opened, and after that I tried. Now it's opened, no? Now I can try, no?
It's open, so it is running, yes. It is hosted basically.
Yeah, so now I'm trying. See.
Okay. So the adding method, number does not contain a definition for adding. So go to your the application, the web service application.
Sure. But it
you don't have the adding method. Do you have?
Yeah, I have. Here.
Yes, it is there. Public adding.
Before running, if I kept dot adding, is coming there.
Okay, it's coming there. Okay.
Yeah.
It is a web method and it is coming.
For
and
me, the reference is how it is, means it is.
Can you again add the reference? Can you again add the reference?
Okay, shall I delete this and shall I add?
Delete it and again add it.
For me, it is coming like add service reference. Then
Okay,
I'm
that's
clicking
fine.
here.
Okay. Advanced, yeah.
Now I'm clicking.
Okay. Okay. Now you build it. And no extension manager adding. Okay, what is the signature in your previous one? Integer.
Yeah, integer.
Everything looks perfect. Let's add number.cs. The code number. Okay, show me your ASMX file, number.asmx.
Yeah, number dot.
ASMX file.
But do I want to change anything here?
Yeah, it is fine. The file code behind file is also right. Number.cs. Okay, that's fine too. This class number. And class is also number, right? There in that file. You haven't changed anything.
Here, this one.
Number.cs. The class name is number, right?
Yeah, class name is number.
Okay. Shobana, again, class name is number. Okay, that's fine.
But if I'm trying to add reference from Google, if I tried from link from search it and tried from Google, but that is working fine.
That is working, but this one is not working.
Yeah, this one is not working.
And go back to application again, the client.
Yeah. Even shall I?
Just remove this and put obj dot.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Coming here, no?
Using localhost.
This is right?
This is right. Otherwise, you could not create the object of the class.
Yeah.
You are able to create the object from this namespace. Integer is the return. Web reference. That is also fine. And if you even try to run, even if there is an error, then what happens, Shobna?
And then also this error is showing there. Just a minute, I'll save it and I will run.
Okay. Okay. Can you try the other method, hello world method, which is already there, the web method?
Yeah, that is also it is showing an error. I tried.
Okay.
Yeah, I tried.
Okay, then leave it. If you have tried it, leave it, Shobna.
Okay.
So there is some other problem. When you add it, can you give some other namespace name? Maybe this localhost is the problem.
Yeah, even I tried that also. Just a minute.
That also you have tried? Okay. So leave that. Whatever options you have tried, and I'm again recommending that leave those.
But I tried in many ways. I not remember correctly whether I 1 minute.
Okay. So you can try now. Just instead of localhost, give something else.
Yeah. not coming, right?
In your web service, go to your web service.
Yeah.
Not here. Open your web service class.
Web service class.
Web service application. Sorry. Yeah, web service class.
Just a minute.
The other one.
I mean.
The other application where you have written the web service.
Here.
Yeah.
This one.
Here, can you change this namespace?
Namespace.
This namespace, web service namespace. The first attribute. Namespace. Put something here.
Here or else this one?
Here, yeah. The value of it. Make something like HTTP or www dot .org. Put something, one more name in between. www.numberservice.org. That's it.
Okay.
Okay, start it again.
Okay. Then I will stop it and I will run it again.
Stop it and run it again.
Sure.
Now add this as a reference. Did you test your web service from here? It is working here?
Yeah. It is working.
Okay.
Shall I test?
Okay.
Okay, now it is coming. Okay, shall I run it or else I want to do it again?
Run it now.
Yeah.
Same error. The type or namespace localhost could not be found.
Yeah, shall I build it and run it again? How shall I do?
No, so you have to add the reference again.
But I added, no?
You added just now after changing the namespace?
Tanvi, this is Ramya here.
Yeah, Ramya, go ahead.
I think, what I feel is like, I think she needs to update the web reference here and add the, the default namespace .localhost. Will that work?
We can try that, yeah. This is the, either you update it or add the new reference, yeah.
Shall I change the name? Or else how it will,
now you put the namespace which you have provided in the web service, like org dot, something like org dot numberservice dot www. Change it here, org dot. Okay. Okay. Okay, use this one now, org dot. Try it now.
yeah, now it's not showing.
It's not showing the error or it is showing?
No, it's not showing. Oh no, going up.
Okay, Ramya, now what you were suggesting, Ramya?
Yeah, Tanvi, like the default namespace dot localhost.
Default namespace.
Yeah.
Default namespace localhost. Then you're asking me to local dot localhost dot localhost.
No. You'll be having a default namespace, right? If you could right click and check on the properties.
Where you're saying?
Yeah, just right click.
Property page.
Properties window.
Here?
Yeah.
This one?
Properties window, right?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
In the property page, you can check.
Okay.
It will not be here. But namespace it is taking. Let's see.
Okay.
To me, it looks perfect, Shobna. I don't know what is the problem.
Okay.
And now why this is coming, the type or namespace name localhost could not be found. We are not using it localhost anywhere.
Yeah. Ramya, have you tried like this in different application like that you have tried? Because if I'm taking from Google, it is working. If it is not doing myself, if it is in different, it is not taking. That's what.
Can you again go to your properties page as Ramya was suggesting for the default namespace? Properties window or page. Can you find some default namespace there so we can try with this? Go to the property page.
Property page.
There should be some application option here. It's not there. I'm checking in my machine.
Yes, this one.
Where? One second. This is the reference name which is there.
Yeah.
Let's see it after the class, Shobana, or maybe you can email just your code. I will check it on my machine.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Okay,
Because
sure.
we are not able to figure out here. It looks fine, but I don't know what is the problem.
Okay, fine. Sure.
Anyone else? Any question? Okay, so we'll begin with the new topic. Okay. So my voice is echoing. Guys, please be on mute.
Sorry, I forgot to put it.
That is why. Okay, so we are starting with on the application security. So how we can give some security to our application, different ways. One is authentication, authorization, and SSL. So we'll be going to discuss them in detail. So start with the authentication and authorization. First of all, what an authentication is? Authentication is when someone is accessing your application, so you are identifying the user that he's the right user or legitimate user or not. There are different ways to achieve this, how you can identify a right user. Different ways are there, so we'll see them. But you are identifying that user is allowed to access the application, so that is authentication. When user is allowed to access the application, that user is an authenticated user. So this is the level 1 security which you give to your application. The user is authenticated or not. Once the user is authenticated, then you give access to your application. Then level 2 security comes, which is the authorization. Authorization is what kind of privileges that user or the authenticated user has in your application. What kind of privileges means what is accessible to that user. So there may be something like admin.aspx page. So you can set that admin.aspx is only accessible to admin user. There is another user, let's say Tanvi, who is also authenticated but does not have access to this resource or this page. So that is authorization, granting access to authenticated users. These are two ways to secure your application through authentication and authorization. Another one is impersonation, which we'll see. Impersonation is always in conjunction with anonymous access. Anonymous access is anyone can access your application. So basically you are not doing any authentication. Any user can access your application, like public websites which we frequently access on the internet, company websites, private limited company websites, where we don't have to log in but we can read their about us page, services page. So those are public websites which are using the anonymous access. Anyone can access the application. In that case, when we are using anonymous, when application is allowing anonymous access, in that case, ASP.NET assumes user account identity, okay, which is generally iUser identity. So when you open your management and if you see users, you will find iUser there. So whenever there is an anonymous access, this identity is assumed. Okay, so based on this identity, the privileges are given. Whatever privileges are there in your computer for this iUser identity, so the same privileges will be assumed for the user who is logging to the application, who is actually accessing the application, not logging. Is it clear, guys? Getting it?
Can you repeat that impersonation alone?
Impersonation is anonymous access. Anyone can access the application. Okay, so basically there is no authentication mechanism, but anyone can access. So by default, ASP.NET will understand whoever is accessing is iUser. Default identity. This is the default identity. Okay, so there will be privileges for iUser. Some privileges, read, write, read and write. Whatever privileges are there for iUser, those privileges will be for the anonymous user. Basically, when you are not providing any identity, you are anonymous user. So it is assuming this identity by default. The system is assuming this identity by default. Is it clear? I'll see in detail what authentication are available, what kind of things can be achieved through authorization and all. So this is just a thing, what is authentication. So authentication is identifying user, who are you, and authorization is what right user has. Okay, can he access this resource, can he access this resource, He's authenticated, he can access the application, but within the application, what a user can do. So that is authorization. Now different types of authentications are available. One is Windows authentication. Windows authentication is in which whenever you are accessing ASP.NET application, user will be authenticated with users operating systems, Windows operating systems credentials or user ID password. Local Windows user ID. So when I am logging through on my application, so it is authenticating me. If I am using Windows authentication as a mode, it is authenticating me with my Windows login user ID and password. Okay, whenever we have on operating system, we have user ID and password. With that identity, we are getting authenticated. Okay, this is Windows authentication. Forms authentication is in which you will get a form where you will enter your user ID and password. Then user ID and password will be matched from some database or wherever you are storing them. And then once user is authenticated or matches in the database, then one cookie will be stored on the client machine. Okay, so forms authentication is a cookie based authentication. So next time user again access the application, if the cookie is available in the machine, so information which is user ID password will be retrieved from the cookie and user doesn't have to log in again. That is what the forms authentication is. Any doubt here? Any question? Okay, so I'll move on then. Next is passport authentication. Passport authentication is, it is actually the invention of Microsoft, but it is now deprecated. Nobody uses it. 2003, 2004, it was a hype. Then after 2005, I guess no one is using passport authentication anymore, but this is also there. And in which what happens, user creates his credentials, login ID, password at one place, which we call the passport site. And with that one set of user ID and password, user can access or basically log in to multiple web applications. So user doesn't have to remember different set of passwords. So with one set of user ID password which is created on passport site, okay, with this user can access Hotmail, Windows Live, etc., MSN Live. So all these applications are using the database of passport site. Okay, so this also is saving a passport cookie on the machine if the user is authenticated, so that next time user doesn't have to refill the user ID and password. This is what the passport authentication is. In this authentication, one central passport site is involved, and all other websites who wants to use this scheme of authentication are registered with this passport site. So Hotmail is registered, Windows Live is registered, MSN is registered. So all these three websites, as they are using passport authentication, they are registered with this passport site. These three websites, you can use a single user ID and password. You don't have to create a separate on each website. Is it clear, guys? Is it clear? Any question here? Can you hear me, guys? I'm audible? Okay. So we'll move on. Next is anonymous access, which is basically no authentication. Okay, anyone can access the website. So where we use these authentication, anonymous is used for the public internet websites, which are just for the information purpose. You just want to give information about your company, what your company does, what is the contact information and all. Okay, so you use anonymous access there where no login required. Windows authentication is used generally in intranet. So when we are in intranet, like in offices, what do we have? We have intranet. Okay, so in intranet we have many resources like printer, scanner. When we want to access the printer, scanner, what we do? We use some user ID and password for that intranet. Okay, so in the intranet system, even if you have some web application that can use this Windows authentication, and for that application you don't need a separate user ID and password. The intranet user ID password which you use to access your intranet resources, the same can be used for accessing the application. So in this is basically used, Windows authentication is used in intranet side or the private corporate networks. Okay, so the database is on the domain controller. Okay, or locally if you are using Windows authentication, it will use your operating systems, your Windows operating systems user ID and password. Forms authentication is whenever your website is doing something confidential like money transaction, e-commerce operation, banking applications. So you are viewing your account balance and all. So all these things need something, login mechanism where user can log in and then can be authenticated and can allow access. So this is forms authentication is used for these kind of applications, and in this case user will get a login form, and when he enters his user ID password, it will be meshed again database. Then passport authentication is for multiple commercial web applications. You are a single company and you are running you have multiple web applications, even though you are a single company, like a Microsoft. They have different applications like Windows Live, they have MSN. So all these are product of Microsoft. So what you can do is, instead of telling user to register on each and every application of yours, you can register as a single, or you can just register once and can use the same identity for those multiple applications. So it is allowing user to sign in once through a central authority, and that information is stored on Microsoft's passport site, and this information we call a passport profile also. So user is able to log into multiple websites using the same identity. Okay. So these are the different kind of authentications available. First we'll go in detail with Windows authentication. So Windows authentication, which is using the security features integrated into the operating system, and even the privileges also. Whenever we create a new user in our operating system, we can provide privileges. We can set role like administrator, guest. So the same roles also will be used of your operating systems. So user can web application, if in the intranet we have the web application, that application can use the same security scheme that is applying to the corporate network or the intranet. Even the same permissions or privileges also are used, which are there for the network resources in the intranet or corporate network. How we set, or how we actually do programmatically, how we do Windows authentication. Let's see this. We can achieve we can set authentication settings from IIS and from web.config file. From both the places we can set. First IIS settings is evaluated, and then web.config file settings are evaluated. But especially Windows authentication, it has to work with IIS. There are some settings related to Windows authentication which can only be done through IIS but not through web.config file. So we'll see that this is how we can set Windows authentication in the web.config file. So you will have the authentication element and you can set the mode as Windows. Then there is a mode as forms and passport. 3 modes are available. So for Windows, we use the Windows as the mode and then authorization. Let's see this programmatically. Okay, first we'll see we can do this setting from the IIS also. So this is the application where this is the web.config file. All the authentication related code you can see I have commented them out. This is the application hosted under IIS. The same application which I am running through this development server, the same is hosted on. Okay, we'll do a brief. Everyone knows how to host application in IIS? Okay, let's do in brief. We'll see how to host application in IIS. Then we'll see it in detail in the deployment class. But here I will show you the brief. This is IIS. You can install IIS from the. It comes as the in the operating system is called. It comes as the component, Windows component. So here you can find IIS in your program and features if you will go. So these are the Windows features, or in XP it is component, in Windows 7 it is features, both are the same thing. Here you can see Internet Information Services. This is the web server which we use to host ASP.NET application. So you select this server and choose the tools whatever you need. If you want to apply scheme or authentication scheme through IIS, so make sure you select these tools also, like Windows Authentication, which can apply Windows Authentication scheme, Digest Authentication, Basic. So you check them. By default, these are not checked. And just click OK and install them. And then restart the machine. So it will install the IIS in the machine. Now to host the application here, what you have to do is, you will see sites node there. Expand it, you will find default websites node. Here, you can create a virtual directory. Whatever application you are hosting. For example, I am creating a virtual directory, give some name, test, or any name. Basically, the test is already used, I will use new. And give the physical path of application. So generally this physical path will be the published version where the DLLs are generated. For now, I will just use the source code version. But practically you will, let me use this. I'm using the same path for same application. So I'm creating a virtual directory here. Virtual directory. Name your virtual directory. This is the physical path. This is where the application is. Okay. Website 6. This is a physical folder in my machine where the application is. Again, I'm repeating this is a source code, but practically when you are deploying your website, this will not be the source code, but will be the published website, which will have the DLL instead of the ASPX and CS files. But here, just for the demonstration, I am using the source code. Click OK. So this is, now you will use your website as localhost/new from the IIS. Now you can set your authentication schemes here. For now, I am using this anonymous authentication. So anyone can use the application. Okay, before that, what you have to do is one more setting you have to do. You have to set your Okay, this is correct. I want to set the, okay, now you have to convert this. I want to set the application pool to separate this worker process of this application. So what I'm doing is I'm converting it to the application. This virtual directory I'm converting to the application, and you can set your application pool here. So you can set the default pool, or if you want your worker process to be in separate pool for more protection. So you can add pool here. I'm using this, which pool I have created. You can create your pools from here. Application pool, add application pool, give the name, select the version, and set as integrated or the classic mode. Okay. So integrated is integrated with the IIS, classic is separate from IIS. Okay. So I have set the application pool for this new. Authentication also I have set, which is anonymous authentication. Okay. So now this website is hosted and I can access it directly from IIS. This is something, this is whatever, this is a sample application. So whatever is there, you can see this is the page in that application. This is how you host the application. Any question here, guys? Is it clear? Is it clear to you, Shobana?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on. Shobana, are you there?
Yeah, I replied you. Okay, yeah. Hello?
Is it clear to you, Shobana? Yeah, Shobana.
Yeah. Clear. Yeah.
Okay. Now this is how we host. There are many more settings which we'll see in detail later. Now here we are focusing on authentication setting. So this is the application which we are using. See the authentication. Now here is anonymous authentication enabled. I am disabling this Windows authentication as well. Okay, only the anonymous authentication is. Now see what authentication your application is using. What I'm doing, I'm just writing some code here. User.identity. There with the user.identity, you can check the identity of the user who is accessing the application. Okay, with this user.identity. Now I'm checking some settings here. Is authenticated, if the user is authenticated or not, the name of the user and the type of the authentication. Okay. So what did I do? I just enabled the anonymous authentication and access the application. Okay, so it is allowed to access without entering any user ID password because it is the anonymous access. Now we can check because I have written a code on this page. So you can see authenticated false. We are not authenticating the user. Username is null, authentication type is null because what we are doing here is anonymous access. So this is how the anonymous access is. Everyone is allowed to access the application. Okay. Now guys, I'll be back in a minute. Hi guys, I'm back. Okay, so anonymous access, we saw anonymous access. Anyone is able to access the application. Now we'll see Windows authentication. How we are using Windows authentication. We can do the settings from IIS as well as web.config. So here I'm showing you from the IIS. Enable the Windows authentication. Okay. The web.config. Now you can see when I did this setting, Windows authentication, so it is asking me the username and password, and it will authenticate with the Windows username and password, whatever is your operating system's user ID and password. Now you can check here if I run application from here. Okay. This I will tell you why this is happening. Here you can see when I am running it through the development server, this is what we can see. Authenticated true. Username, this is the machine name. Sorry, not the machine name. Username on this machine. Asus PC is the machine name and Asus is the user. Authentication type is NTLM. NTLM is Windows Integrated Authentication. So your development server is allowing me to access this application, and automatically or by default it uses Windows Integrated Authentication, or the other name for this is Network LAN Manager. So NTLM, this was the previous name. After that Microsoft changed it and made it the Integrated Authentication. Okay, so here you can see we are logging in through Windows Authentication. Here I have done the setting for Windows Authentication. Now here it is asking me to enter user ID and password. The IIS which we have to enter, I cannot show you guys because my machine's user ID password for this login is blank, and it doesn't take the blank. Windows Integrated Authentication doesn't take the blank one, so it is not taking. But if you have the password, it will take that identity. Okay, what I can do is I can change the role and login, but I don't know in that case I'll be in the meeting, or let me try to switch the user. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Can anyone answer? Because I am switching the user. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yes, Tanvi.
Can hear? Okay. Okay. And can you guys see my screen as well?
Yeah, yes, Tanvi.
Okay, so I'm logging in with another user.
Tanvi,
Huh? Yes,
this
Tanvi.
is Ramya here.
Yes, Tanvi.
The screen I see is the error 4.1 error, so I'm not sure.
So you cannot see the other screen actually.
Oh, okay.
Can you see my screen now? I logged in with the other user. Can you see this?
No, Tanvi, it still shows the error screen.
Okay, so I cannot show you. I cannot demonstrate this.
Okay.
But you can try it and put your user ID and password of your operating system. It will allow you. I'm again coming back to the previous user.
Okay.
Okay, so this is how Windows authentication works. This line, what I have written here is deny users and question mark. This question mark means unauthenticated users. So if you don't write this, and even though you have set authentication mode as Windows, okay, but you will see the anonymous access will be allowed. So this line is compulsory, which means deny unauthenticated users.
Tanvi, sorry to interrupt. This is Ramya here.
Yeah, Ramya.
Tanvi, I couldn't see the screen that you are sharing now. I still see the error page. Are the others able to see the current page?
I have my
No,
web
it's the
config
same
open.
error message.
Same error message.
Yeah.
Let me
Yeah.
stop it and again share it.
Okay.
Can you see now?
No.
No, Tanvi.
No.
Still not? Can you see now?
Yes, Tanvi, I'm able to.
Okay. So in the web.config, if you will see deny users question mark, this thing is question mark is here unauthenticated users. So you are writing this code to deny all unauthenticated users. Okay. Otherwise, it will allow anonymous access if it is enabled from IIS. So this is what you have to still do with the Windows authentication. Is it clear? So when ultimately in brief, Windows authentication is authenticating us with the operating system's user ID and password. In case of local, if we are in internet, it is authenticating us from the domain controller database, from the network database. So if working locally, it will authorize user with Windows username and password. If remotely working, it will ask user to enter username and password. And in the domain, if you are in intranet, it will ask you to enter username and password and match with the domain network. Okay, your network's database. Okay. Now in Windows authentication, we can see that there is a need of transferring your user ID and password from our operating system to IIS. This is what we need. Okay, because it is authenticating us not with some external database which the application has access to, but from user's machine. So from your user's machine, the password and ID should go to the IIS. Okay, and with that identity, it is allowing us to access. Now to pass this user ID and password from operating system to IIS, there are 3 ways. This is part of Windows authentication itself, but the way of passing these credentials are different. One is basic, another one is digest, and the one which we just used is integrated, because this is the default one. If you just use mode as Windows, that means you are using the integrated Windows authentication mode. All 3 are doing the same thing. It will ask you to enter user ID and password of your machine, but the way of passing is different. Okay, so for example, you can see here the settings. These settings cannot be done through the web.config. Passing credentials from your machine, from client machine to server's IIS. Okay, that cannot be done in the web.config. In the web.config, you can just set the mode as Windows, and this is the integrated one. From the IIS, you can set the setting how the credentials will be passed from OS to IIS. And what settings are available is basic. This Windows authentication is the integrated one, and the digest. Okay. Now basic authentication is basically the credentials which are passed, those are encoded. Okay, and then again on the IIS decoded. Okay, so that in between that is secure. But as we know, this encoding is not the encryption technique. Encoded message can be easily decoded also. Okay, so if it is not completely protected. So digest is what it is doing. It is doing the encryption and using some algorithm. With the digest, you have to be associated. The server has to be associated with some domain. Okay, so digest we cannot use on the local. And integrated authentication is, it is using the NTLM authentication algorithm. So basically in all these three, the difference is the algorithm which is being used to pass your credentials from OS to IIS. Getting it, guys? So you can see, even if I disable this Windows authentication and I enable this basic authentication, okay, still I do this, it will ask me to enter the username and password, and I will use the same machine's username and password. But the way of transferring to IIS will be different from the integrated one. Is it clear? Any question here? Okay, so we'll move on. Okay, this is what Windows authentication is. With the diagram you can see. So this is the case when we are using Windows authentication in intranet. So intranet, we have network domain controller where we have the database or users basically for accessing the network resources, our regular network resources. And in the same intranet, we have the server where the application is also hosted. So when client is requesting it, it is authenticating from this domain controller. Client is not using a separate user ID and password for the application, but the same intranet user ID and password. And once it is authenticated, sending response back to the client. No, we don't have to write any algorithms, Anita. This is everything happening underneath through IIS. I'm just mentioning these things, that how it is happening, what different modes are there. We have to just do the settings. So basic digest integrated, we see in IIS 6.0 you will see this kind of window. Mine is IIS 7. So you are seeing this in the list format, and this is the screenshot from IIS 6. So you will see the option for integrated Windows authentication digest basic, and you will see here a checkbox for anonymous access. Okay. The only thing is the difference in the view. Now basic is user ID and password are passed by using base64 encoded format. Encoded format, encoded message can be decoded easily. So it is not an encryption technique and not very secure way of transmitting the credentials. So digest authentication can be used. It uses MD5 hash algorithm. Okay. And the message is encrypted using this algorithm. Okay. The disadvantage of, or not the disadvantage, you can say something in which the digest authentication is lacking is that some browsers does not support this authentication technique. Another thing is domain has to be associated if you are using digest with the server. So if you see on the local, I cannot use, as I am not associated, my machine is not associated in the domain. You will see I cannot even use this, and you can see this. The enable option is actually disabled. So domain association is must in case of digest authentication. Integrated, this is the default one. We call integrated authentication as NTLM, or whenever we just use the term Windows authentication, that itself means the integrated Windows authentication, and this is the other name. Okay. It uses this algorithm, Kerberos V5 authentication algorithm. Okay. So we will not go in detail with the algorithms. It doesn't make any sense. to go in detail. So based on our need, what kind of security, what level of security we want, we can choose the one of the mechanism of transferring the credentials from operating system to IIS in case of Windows authentication. Okay, this is the precedence. When you have integrated security, digest basic, let's say all of them you have checked, okay, all is enabled. So first integrated will take preference, after that digest, and then basic. Okay, because we know this is the highest level of security, this is the middle one, and there is very less security because there is no encryption on the data. So far clear, guys? Any question, any doubt? Shall I move on? Okay. Now this is what we set from IIS. Now you can see the same thing we can set from web.config file. So we can do this authentication mode here, Windows, and authorization deny on authenticated users. From IIS, I will disable this setting of Windows authentication. Okay, so here is anonymous access just enabled so that the request will pass through IIS. Okay, definitely it will not happen because in the IIS I am disabling the Windows authentication. What I wanted to show you is if your IIS is enabling the one second, guys. This is integrated one. Okay. So anonymous authentication is enabled. Okay, it is not allowing us because there I have done this setting deny on authenticated users, and it will only allow operating systems user ID and password. So I cannot access it like this through IIS. So this is enabled. Now you can see from here, if I run this, this is showing us that we are in the integrated authentication mode. Okay, NTLM is the integrated one. And this is the identity of the user which is logged on to the machine. Okay. Next is, okay. Next is impersonation. We can do the impersonation setting. Also, as I said, by default, what happens? It will assume an identity. Now again, this is a little change in IIS 6 and IIS 7. So in IIS 6, if impersonation is disabled, okay, so it uses the default identity. If it is enabled, it uses the identity from the user account, but it is the other way in IIS 7. Okay, so impersonation, if it is disabled, it uses the ASP.NET account, otherwise it uses the user account. Let me show you this. Now to see, this is impersonation we use when your application is running. Application is a process. Okay, so your application is running. So when your application is running, in which identity it is running? Even though before starting the application, before logging, when we start the application and we get the login page. Okay, so login page, to get the login page also the application has to be running. Okay, and means the process is running. Under which identity that process is running, we'll see this. Now this impersonation is disabled here. In IIS it is disabled. Now on this page, to check under which identity the application process is running, I have written this line of code. Environment username. Okay, so environment gives you, this is the object which gives you the details of the environment in which your application is running, and username will give the username under which the application is running. Okay, now if I will access this, sorry, from the IIS, let me disable the Windows authentication, otherwise it will ask me to enter. Okay, now you can see thread is running under this identity, my pool. Okay, which is the default identity which I created. Now you can see here application, my pool. See, I am not running directly within the application process, but I am running within the application. I have created another pool. So it is showing me the username as the identity, which is the application pool under which the process is running, because I have created a separate pool. I am not running this application under the process of IIS. So it is showing me the pool name. Okay, but impersonate is I can pretend to run this application under some other identity. Okay, so when I do this impersonation enable, sorry, I will to change the pool also. Okay, now you can see the default identity. Okay, this is the default identity. So when impersonation is disabled in IIS 7, application is running under the user identity, the user who is logging in. Okay, when impersonation is enabled, it is running as the with the default identity. Is it clear, guys? Everyone clear? Okay. Now the same setting you can do from the web.config also. So here the identity disabled is use the permission in the user account. So when I had the identity disabled, I could see the my pool which I created, the application pool. So that is the identity in my case. When impersonation is enabled, use the permission in ASP.NET account. ASP.NET is the default account which is iUser. You can do the same setting from here as well, from the web.config. So identity impersonate true. Now you can see this is the machine name. Now it is the development server. So there is no application pool which I created under IIS. So the identity is the user who is logging in. So this is the ASUS, the name of the user. So this is enabled. When I make it false, it will use the default one. The application is running under this. It's not making any change. It should be the ASP.NET or iUser here when I do it false. or it doesn't happen on the development server? I'm not sure. You have any idea, Ramya, why this is happening? Or Kasturi?
No, Tanvi, I'm not sure.
Impersonation should work from the web.config file, and this is the way we work with it. Impersonate files. And by default it is Windows, so I'll just comment it out. There is no point writing this. So running on the same. Guys, just bear with me for 5 minutes. System.web, even I am using in system.web. Outside authentications. Okay, Dinesh is not the administrator. I have to check administrator account. This is the administrator account. From where we can add the role for the user.
I think in groups we can add, yeah.
Groups we can add. So these are groups, but I want to add administrator.
Yeah, here you can add the
Dinesh.
user.
Example, I want to add Dinesh in the administrator group. So what I will do, member of, I think here I will have to write.
Administrators.
Yeah. This is possible. Oh, that this here is coming. Ready to map path. Well, I will look into this. Actually, this impersonation, as we can change the identity from IIS, the same should be happening here also. We can do this same thing with the web.config file also, and I'm sure we can do so. I'll just check what is the problem. Okay, well, I'll let you guys know tomorrow what is the problem, or you can also check on your machine what's happening. Maybe this is something on my machine. So I'll move on. Everyone here? Okay. So this, so impersonation is when you are changing your application's process under some identity. You can use impersonation, and you can enable or disable the impersonation. Now it is different in IIS 6 and 7. So in IIS 7, it is disabled. It uses the user account, and it is enabled. It uses the ASP.NET account. In IIS 6, this is the other way. And this is how you can achieve through the web.config file also. Now in my case, some problem is happening, so I don't know. We'll see later. Now layer 2 security is specific users of or group of users can be permitted or prohibited. This is also we can set in the configuration. Now how we can set is we can allow or deny specific user. So when I write this asterisk means all the users, This question mark means unauthenticated users. Okay, so what we can do is authorization deny users. That means deny all unauthenticated users. Authorization, when we can allow specific user. So allow is the element which we use. Allow users, allow these two users. And deny users, deny anyone else. So only allow these two users to the application. Okay. Now the same thing, allowing or denying, we can do instead of user wise, we can do achieve as role wise also. So we can allow or deny a specific group of users. So allow roles on this network, all the administrators who have administrators as a role are allowed. Okay, or deny anyone else. Okay, so this is, we call them the role based authentication or user based authentication. So we are allowing or denying specific users or specific roles with these settings. Now this is, I am already using whatever kind of authentication using. You can check the user's identity with the user.identity class. So with this user.identity, you can check the user's identity in any authentication mode you are. You can check this. So is authenticated, gives you true and false, name, the name of the user, and type, the type of the authentication is being used. Now, authentication, authorization, both settings can be done in the web.config as well as in the IIS. So first the web.config settings will be validated, then, first the IIS settings will be validated, then the web.config file. So if you have enabled anonymous access in IIS, but you have disabled by writing this deny everyone else, deny unauthenticated users, then anonymous access will not be allowed. So basically, the same settings if you are doing in the IIS and web.config with different values, so web.config will take the preference. So IIS settings will be overridden. Okay. Now this is what is actually happening in the Windows authentication. So when a client comes, now we are checking the IP address and the domain. If the IP address and domain permitted, then client is able to go through IP address and domain permission. This is not the application security. This is just the IP address and domain is allowed for that user, because we can ban some users for specific IPs also. Okay, so that we are checking, not part of the application security, but it is like you have the restrictions for the user on some IP. If the user is allowed to access some IP, then the II is checking. If the user is authenticated, it is launching the ASP.NET application. Then in the ASP.NET application, if the impersonation is enabled, okay, so ASP.NET will assume the user's identity, some default identity, which is iUser, or you can change the assumption, you can change the setting. By default, ASP.NET assumes with iUser, you can change the setting. And if it is not enabled, then it will use the local machine's identity. Local machine's identity, this is the case of Windows authentication. Okay, so whatever identity you are using to log on to the operating system, that identity is assumed. Then it is checking that if you have the permissions or the network file system, then it is granting you the access. Okay, this is what the entire Windows authentication scheme is doing. How you can set Windows authentication mode, this I have already shown you from the IIS. You can set this by checking this integrated Windows authentication. This is IIS 6.0 screenshot. In 7.0, you can just enable the Windows authentication. There will be no integrated Windows authentication. So whatever Windows authentication is there, it is integrated Windows authentication only. Okay, this is the same thing when the client is accessing the application through IIS, we are checking the client machine authorized or not with the identity, then file system permission okay or not. Then if the anonymous access is enabled, then you using this identity, otherwise user will have to be authenticated by operating system's identity. Okay. Otherwise, the identity is assumed. In iOS 6.0, the identity, the default identity is this, iUser underscore machine name. So if I have iOS 6, my default identity will be iUser underscore. This is my machine name. But in iOS 7, it is just iUser. Any questions so far, guys? We are done with the Windows authentication. Is the concept clear? Okay, so we'll move on. The next kind of authentication is forms authentication, which is very popular in the web applications which are available over the internet. So Windows authentication, we saw it is good for intranet, but forms authentication is good for internet where you have some confidential or private information specific to the users. So in the forms authentication, user will get a form to collect the username and password. Then you will have to write the code which will authenticate this username and password from the database or data source wherever it is stored. And then if the user is authenticated, will get the access to the resource. So in this authentication mode, user does not have to be the member of the domain-based network. This is good for websites which need to access the user's information or private information, like e-commerce application which uses users information for the billing purpose. How to use in forms authentication? You can do it again, the setting from the IIS as well as from the web.config file. In the web.config file, you have the forms element, you have the authentication element, and you have to set mode as forms. Then you have to create a web form to collect login information. So you will create a web form like login.aspx, whatever name you want to give. Then you have to create a database to store username and password. When user click on login button on this form, then you will have to write the code to authenticate the user against database. Okay, this is what a forms authentication is. Now we know ADO.NET, we can create a table in the database, user table, user ID, password, and we can write code to match the information entered in the text boxes from the database against the database table. Okay. If we have less number of users for our application, we have 4 or 5 users, instead of maintaining that user list in database, we can maintain the same list in the web.config file also. Okay. So here I will show you the example of forms authentication, and here I will use the web.config file to save the users. Okay, but this is not mandatory. You can save the users in database, and you can write ADO.NET code to match the credentials against the database. Okay, once the user is authenticated, matches in the database or in the web.config file, it will create a cookie. The application will create a cookie and will save that cookie in the client machine to remember the user for the next login. Okay, so let's see this practically, how we are doing it, how we are using the forms authentication. So this is what is happening. Client is requesting for some resource, let's say welcome.aspx page from the server. Server is using the authentication mode as forms. So what server will do? It will automatically throw the login page where server is collecting the user ID and password. Now client will have to fill up that login form, will send the request back to the server, this time with the data, user ID and password. Now server will match this data against some data source, which can be web.config file, can be any database, can be any other XML file. Then if it is authenticated, if the user is there in the web.config file or in the database, it will send the resource, send the client the requested page which client requested first with the authentication cookie. Now this cookie will be saved on the client machine. Now next time client will not have to again enter the user ID and password. Okay, it will automatically fetch from the cookie. It will first check if the cookie exists, and if the cookie exists, it will fetch the information from the cookie. Okay. Now this is how you can do the settings for forms authentication in the web.config file. So here the authentication element mode is set as forms. Okay. Now within the authentication element you have forms element, and forms element has this attribute login URL. So login URL is the login page of your application where you are collecting the login information of the user. Okay. Now if we are maintaining users in web.config file, so there is one more element which within the forms element, which is the credentials. Okay. In this element we are maintaining the user list, or basically the users who can access the application. So you can say user list has name, password, name, password. So there are 2 users who can access the application, any resource from the application. Okay. And then within the credentials you have multiple settings like password format. When clear is there, that means you are not doing any encryption on the password. Okay. Then authorization, deny all unauthenticated users. So other than these 2, deny anyone else. So even the anonymous access will be disallowed when you are doing this setting. Okay, this is the description of the elements what we have in the forms authentication mode. So authentication mode, we can set the mode to as forms to enable the forms authentication. Within the forms we have the name. So it will set the name of the cookie which will be saved after the user is authenticated using the forms authentication mode. Okay. But we have to make sure that we provide a unique cookie name. The cookie should not be there in the machine already. If you are not providing any name, it will use the default name. Then the login URL is the URL of your login form where you are collecting the information. Okay. Protection is the what kind of encryption, what kind of protection you have. Are we using any encryption or data validation? Okay. So this is what you can set with the protection. Timeout is if you are saving, when user is authenticated, the cookie is saved on the machine. The timeout of that cookie, how long that cookie should be on the machine. So the default is this 30 minutes. Okay, after 30 minutes, that form authentication related cookie will be deleted from the machine. Path is where we are storing the cookie. If you are not, this setting is must. You have to set your login URL, which is your login page, and other settings are, if you are not setting them, it will take the default settings. In the credentials, you have password format. Password format is the algorithm which is used to encrypt the user's password. Clear is no password, and there are 2 other algorithms, SHA1 and the MD5. User's element has the name and the password field. Okay, now let's see this, how to implement this authentication technique. So in the web.config file, you can see this is the forms authentication. For now, I'll just keep the default settings. So forms authentication, login URL. Now this is my login page. On this page, I am collecting the information and matching it with the database or any other data source. Okay. Now in my case, I am using the database as the web.config file itself, and I am keeping 2 users here. These 2 users are only allowed. Okay. So let me open this page. So this page, this is my login page. This is the login page where I want to collect the information. You can see I have the name, password, and the login button. Okay. Now see the code behind. Now here I am matching the data against the web.config file. I have the data in the web.config file, the user data in the web.config file. So for that, you need this namespace system.web.security. Now on the sign on click, I am using the forms authentication class. Okay, forms authentication class has one method, authenticate. Okay, this method will match or will check your data from the web.config file's credentials element. Okay, so here I am passing the name entered and the password entered. Okay, so if it is returning true, that means this information is available in the web.config file. So if it authenticates, then I am using another method from the same class, which is redirect from login page. So let's say user accessed or requested some other page, welcome.aspx, but as we are implementing forms authentication, user got the login page. Now user is authenticated. So after authentication, what you want? Redirect user to the requested page. So again, welcome page. Okay. Plus save the cookie on the machine. This will happen through this method, redirect from login page. So redirect to whom? Redirects to user. This user should be redirected to the requested page, and if you are passing it as true, save the cookie also in the machine. If it is false, it will not save the machine. Save the cookie in the machine. Okay, and if this authenticate is returning you the false, that means user is not there in the web.config file. Okay, now we'll see this. On this. Now I requested for this page. You can see this page I requested for ex windows authentication.aspx, but I got login page of my application, which I have set here in the web.config file, the login page. This is the login URL here in the authentication. This is the login URL. So I got this page. Okay. Now here I enter something. It will match in the database. And here I am using the web.config file. It comes here. You can see authenticate. This is returning false. So this user is not there. When I put the correct information, the user which is there in the web.config file. Now this user Tanvi is there in the web.config file with the password. Redirect from login page. It will save the cookie and redirect to the requested page. So this page I requested, ex Windows authentication page. Okay, and now it is giving me this page. It is allowing me to access this page. And here also you can see the username is Tanvi, authentication type is forms, because on this page I am displaying this information with the same user.identity. Is it clear, guys? Now you can see if I again request for this page, I am not getting any login page, even though I am in the forms authentication mode, because it is taking it from the cookie which is saved in the machine. You can see the cookies as well. So you can see this is the name of the cookie, the default name of the cookie which is saved through the forms authentication, and this is the content, the encrypted one, user, the password and user ID. Okay, now this is automatically fetched from the cookie, the user ID and password, so we don't have to again log in. Everyone clear? Any question here? Okay. Now for this, the same settings which we have available in the cookies available here also with the cookieless attribute. These are the different values for this. Auto detect is, it will automatically check through which browser you are logging in, you are accessing the application. If the browser has cookies enabled option, then it will save the cookie. Otherwise, it will pass it in the URL. When you are saying use cookies, that means it is the default setting. It is using the cookie. Use device profile. I don't know what use device profile is. Use device. Cookies are useful if the device profile support cookies. Otherwise, no cookies are used. Cookies are used. If the device profile support cookies. Now I don't know what is a device profile. Otherwise, no cookies are used. Does not check to determine whether cookies are enabled on device that support cookies. Device means the browser should be the device. This is default settings for iOS. Depending on the browser making the request, the cookieless feature may or may not be used. If ASP.NET recognizes that the browser does not support cookies, then the cookieless feature will be used. So what is auto detect? Auto detect is also attempting to detect whether the browser supports cookie or not. Depending on the browser making the request, the cookieless feature may or may not be used. I don't know guys, for me it both looks the same. It is detecting the browser is supporting the cookie or not. If the browser does not support the cookie, then cookieless feature will be used. Well, I will check it. I have never used this setting. I never heard of this. So use device profile, but for me it looks the same, that ASP.NET is checking the browser, and if it is supporting the cookie, then it is using the cookie way and it is saving the cookie. If it is not supporting it, then it is passing in the URI and it is using the cookieless feature. Maybe the algorithm may be different of detection. I'll check it tomorrow. So for now, let's say I am the cookieless is auto detect, the default mode in which it detects. If I put use URI, that means the cookie will not be saved and the user ID and the password will be encrypted and will be passed as the part of the UI. So when I log in here with this mode, cookieless as URI, now you can see this is the user ID and password. It did not create the cookie on the machine. So again I will have to enter. It will not remember me as this is the cookieless mode. So every time it will pass the information as the part of the URL. Is that clear, guys? Any question, anyone? Let's move on. So to forms authentication, to authenticate and to save the cookie, we are using the forms authentication class, which is available here in this namespace. The forms authentication class authenticate method checks the username and password against the user list found in the credentials element of the web.config file. Forms authentications redirect from login page. It displays the application Actually not the start page, the requested page which user requested for. And generally it is the start page, because on the start page requesting you get the login page itself. We can use forms authentication class even to sign out also when the user is done with the application. Okay, when you use sign out procedure, it will remove the cookie from the machine, and this is how you can use the sign out procedure. So cookie is removed, and again you want to access, again you have to re-log in. So forms authentication class, you are using the authenticate method if you are maintaining your users in the web.config file. If you are maintaining users in the database, SQL Server database, then you will have to write area.net code to match the information entered with the SQL Server database. This is what you can say it is happening with the forms authentication. So first, client is making request to the IIS. IIS will check the settings that it can pass through the IIS. Then when ASP.NET application is launched, first it is checked the authentication cookie, the forms authentication cookie. If it is attached, the user is directly authenticated. Okay, then the next test happens for the authorization. But user is authenticated. If the cookie is there, if cookie is not there, user will get the login form, put the credentials, fill the credentials, it will be authenticated. If it is authenticated, then it will attach the cookie or save the cookie, and then the authorization test. Everyone clear? Any question? How much time we have left? Started at 8. So we have 2 more topics here in the authentication. Guys, are you here? Can you hear me? Okay, so we have 2 more topics, the passport authentication and SSL, which we can do tomorrow because we have 5-7 minutes left and we cannot complete it. We'll do it tomorrow. Is that okay?
Yeah, okay, Tanvi.
Okay. Now the project which you are doing, use the forms authentication mode there for the login part. So you don't have to do the separate assignment, just in the same project use the login functionality and use the forms authentication method there. Okay. So see you guys tomorrow.
Hi Tanvi, this is Kirti.
Yeah, Kirti.
So there will be only 2 roles, right? That will be admin and the other user who can post the ad.
No, three roles. There will be guest user, there will be admin, and there will be logged in, registered user.
Okay, so the guest user can just view all the ads, that's it.
All the ads can view. The registered one can post the ad, and admin can add or delete category and can approve and disapprove ad.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
Okay, so 3 roles are there.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Kirti. Anyone else? Any other question?
Tanvi, Shobna here. Now it is working.
Yes, Shobna.
It's
working now?
Yeah, but
How?
still it is showing errors, but it is working. After I think we changed the name localhost to, because of that, or else we changed the link, I don't know, but it's showing error, but the answer is coming.
But it's working.
Yeah, it's working.
Okay.
And the link should be, what is that actually link? That should be meaningful, or how it is, what is that, for what purpose that link is there?
Which link?
And that you have asked me to change that www, that HTTP.
Yeah, namespace is like when whatever namespace you provide. See, generally when we are publishing our web services, with the web service publishing, we want to advertise ourselves also. Okay. So my web service, for example, I have free web services x.com. Okay.
Okay.
So what I put in namespace is freewebservicesx.com. So when user will use this, okay. So by default, the namespace will be like this, the other way, com.freewebservices.www.
Okay.
This will be the folder structure. Even the user can change it, but let's say some user doesn't change it. Okay, it doesn't change the name. So he will always remember that this is where he took this web service. He used this web service.
Okay.
Okay, so you are providing a namespace which is the default. If the user is not changing, user is using this namespace.
Okay.
So this you can use to market yourself.
Okay. Okay. Fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Any other thing? Any other question? Okay. So see you guys tomorrow then. Okay. Bye bye everyone.
Okay.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye all. Thanks.
The organizer has ended the session and this call will be disconnected.